it's Amy from ImmaLetYouFinish. Before we get started with episode 195, which of course is as hot as the heat wave we are currently enduring, just want to tell you that if you use our code IMMA 5967, please check out Good Feels, which is a crafted infused seltzer. It's crafted with hemp-derived THC, so I don't think it's going to get you high, but it will certainly chill you out. And oh my God, do we need chilling out right now? In fact, I think I may have to start guzzling it. But anyway, Good Feels. It's really delicious. All sorts of flavors for soothing sensations. IMMA 5967. Go on the Good Feels website. And here comes the show.
What's up, everybody? It's ImmaLetYouFinish, show number 195 on the Pantheon Podcast Network with your hosts, Court and Amy. We're here. Listen, it's hot in New York, but it's hot everywhere, right? Like, my friends in Texas are like, it's a gazillion degrees. My friends in Vegas are like, it's a gazillion degrees. I guess it always just feels the worst here because all of those places tend to have central air no matter where you go.
Well, except Houston, where they don't have electricity.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other conversation, Greg Abbott. All right. Well, you know what's not hot? The new Katy Perry single and the new Eminem record. Please let me, I would like to read, if it's okay with you, I'd like to read just a sampling of the reviews that the new Eminem record.
I love when we do things like, this is what we like to call story time, kids. Story time. Amy, can you read us a story?
I would like to read you a story. It's the story of a 50-year-old rapper who hasn't made a record in years, who is widely regarded by his peers, but seems to be stuck in, 1990, whatever. His new album is called The Death of Slim Shady, in case you don't get what he's going for. Coup de grace, which is French for coup de grace. Here's some of the reviews, some of the words. Developmentally arrested, tired and dated, short, sounds like a star with the yips. It has gotten no higher than 2 stars on any website, including hip-hop website. Joyless, uninspired, punching downwards, and he makes fun of Christopher Reeve. How long has Christopher Reeve been dead for?
Decades at this point.
Decades, right? Decades. Like, can we assume that most of his audience doesn't even know? And I'm not making fun of Christopher Reeve at all.
No, they don't know who
No, they don't know who
it is.
Nor should you make fun of a man who, by all means, was a wonderful human being and was a quadriplegic through no fault of his own. He also makes fun of, hold for it, Megan Thee Stallion.
It's like,
and of course... Yeah, and of course, Kardashians, because that's so au courant to do that. Look, Eminem is his flow is great. A lot of us have defended him for years because he can be kind of out there and edgy. He's true to the game. He's always been very respectful of who he is and where he comes from. He's never tried to be something that he's not. But Jesus, these reviews are pathetic. Pathetic. I mean, just pathetic.
You know,
I mean, there's
for
no coming back.
some reason, I want to say I'm always surprised that people don't realize just how much hip hop really is a young person's game. It just is, right? It's one of those genres of music that I think people who are hip hop heads, the older you get, I think it's less part of your life. Like, I have friends who are hip hop heads, right? They went to all of the clubs, every hip hop party, every hip hop concert, and it always seemed to be talking about what was going on currently in that universe. So when you come back as a legend in the game to some people, I've never been a huge Eminem fan. I appreciate who he is. I understand the hits, all of that. But I think when you come back, when you're in a certain age group and you're still making hip hop records, I think it's important to make them smart and be saying something. You know what I mean? It's like people are loving this Common and Pete Rock record, right? That feels smart, like Common's trying to say something.
Well, they're not loving what Pete Rock says on the internet, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, really? Oh.
Well, he says he's in the Talib Kweli school of Hotepian.
Oh, God.
Yeah, he gets a little Hotepian,
Oh
but he's a great
Lord.
producer.
Yeah, great for it. But I just feel like with it's just we're retreading stuff that you did really great, and it seems like a very reductive
It
version
is.
of yourself.
Is he? But let's be honest. Has Eminem ever been smart and political? No.
You,
Eminem was like a slasher movie of hip hop.
but at least
I
it was
will.
good, right? And
No,
what
I
he
will
gave people, they
disagree.
liked.
Yeah, I will disagree a little bit. I think that the success of Nas and the success of Kendrick and the success, it's not necessarily an age cutoff. It's a topic cutoff. If you're saying something that people want to hear, they will pay attention no matter what the age. Like I said, this
Well,
Common
listen, I
record,
think Nas has been very successful. Those
right?
albums have been great arts pieces of work, but they've not lit up the hip hop clubs and those young kids. What I'm saying is that really is, it's one of those
Yeah.
genres that really a lot of people when they're young are all in, you know?
Well,
And as we get
yeah.
older, people like you and me, we love listening to the Nas record because it's like, he's Nas. But when you go back to it, when's the last time you played any of those last albums that just came out?
I play them at least every few months.
Yeah, but
Because
that's different than I play it weekly. I play it every day.
No, I don't play
you know?
anything weekly. But the point is that I see your point, but I think it's just an embarrassment, this Eminem record. I haven't even bothered to listen to it because, like I said, between you, me, and the lamppost, I defend Eminem. He has a right to say whatever he wants. I've always found him somewhat juvenile. His flow is undeniable. I respect him for knowing his place. Let's see what the LL record is going to be like, because that's getting very good advance word. It's getting very good advance word.
Do you like the single?
I do like the single, only I don't love the single. I have to go back and listen to it. But here's why I think it could be interesting, because he's doing the one producer thing. Right. And it's the one producer is Q-Tip. And that could be interesting. So I would like to see, that's not going to light the charts on fire either. But there is, people have said there should be adult contemporary hip hop.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I'm not saying that it shouldn't exist. I'm just saying it's a really interesting how the adults who love hip hop consume it. Like you said, I listen to it every couple of months versus these kids, like when you were younger and you were into hip hop, you probably had hip hop on all the time.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I listened to everything. That's what I'm saying. That's always been my kind of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, but you're different. You're a writer, and you know, and so we were surrounded by so much music from every genre. It was like an embarrassment of riches.
Katy Perry, I've never liked Katy Perry. I can't wait for her to do it. I've never liked her. She has one song that I like. I've always think she's been a faux feminist. I mean, any woman that could get upstaged by a dancing shark on the Super Bowl. Remember that? Left Shark. What was it? Left Shark? I mean, when you were outdone by a shark. Anyway, her new single, Woman's World. May I read some of the quotes from it?
Yes, you can.
Regressive, out of touch. Here's my favorite. Warmed over hell. This is supposed to be such a bad song that people are saying she will never be able to come back from this. And of course, did you see the images from it? She has like a fuel pump up her ass, and she's dressed like Rosie the Riveter. And what the hell is that?
I watched the video. I watched the video. I watched the video the night that it premiered. Well, let's talk about the lead up to this. And this is what people do that always bites them in the ass. Leading up to this new project, Katy kept saying, guys, this is my best song yet. This is going to be my biggest hit. This is going to be what you guys are going to be blown. This is my best song. So then, you know how now everything is, nobody ever has a marketing plan. Marketing is, how are people reacting on TikTok? So they put the first little clip out there of audio on the song, and the lyrics are like, sexy, confident, she's so soft, so strong. And the kids were like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, oh, this isn't the reaction I'm sure she wants. First of all, people are really upset that she's worked with Dr. Luke. Now, I didn't realize, I had to go back and look which Katy Perry songs of Dr. Luke has he produced. And it turns out All of the hits.
All of the hits.
I had no idea. And literally it is.
All of the hits.
All of the hits. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I understand why she went back to that drinking well. That's the well she lives in. Okay. But after everything that has happened with him, and I'm not the person to tell anybody you should work with this one, you shouldn't work with that one. But you're coming with what you think is a women's anthem.
And you're working with a man who's been accused of rape.
Who people are looking at in a certain light. And yes, the case with Kesha is over, but you have a shitty song with a guy that everybody is really feel, they just feel a certain way about. And I've never been a huge Katy Perry fan.
Oh, I've never even been a Katy Perry fan.
Right,
one song.
Right.
I like one song.
Which
Teenage
one?
Dream.
Okay.
Teenage Dream.
And I've seen her in concert.
Oh, bless your heart.
Okay, now here's the thing. Bill Coleman and I went years ago to see her. But we went to see her because Robin was opening for her.
Yeah, Katy Perry can't sing. She can't sing. She can't sing. She cannot sing. Anyway, the album's going to tank. Can we agree?
I like the last previous two. I think this one is
done.
Arriving dead.
No, she's done. And nobody likes her as a human being either. I mean, done. They don't like her. She's full of shit. No, they don't like her. She's not someone who generates goodwill because I think her time on American Idol has not done her any favors because she's the one who kind of comes off kind of whatever, which she's entitled to. I don't think anybody watches American Idol anymore anyway. But the point is the song is terrible. It's a make age appropriate music. There would be nothing wrong if you put out an age appropriate. But I
don't even know what age. I do. Okay, I do know what you mean.
Sticking a gasoline pump up your ass when you're a 40-something-year-old mother is not age appropriate. It's not anything appropriate.
It's in her hip. But it's like the side of a car because she's like a cyborg. Now I will say this though, it really had me thinking about the lifespan of a pop star, especially when you're a female, right? It's like if you have an imperial phase where you get to have a reign of having a bunch of hits, it seems like now that's getting shorter and shorter for people and it makes what Madonna did in her career that more extraordinary because she really did have an unprecedented run of records just getting bigger and bigger. And quite frankly, when Madonna was Katy Perry's age, she was doing the music album. She was
making better music than Katy Perry. She still had
Confessions on the Dance Floor coming and, Hard Candy. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how the lifespan is short. And I do think that she went back to her old tricks where, let's just face it, that style of pop is done. It has moved on.
All right, so last week, we're going to completely contradict ourselves. Last week, we were talking about girls with the Billboard Top 100. And guess what? Mm-hmm. This week, it's boys. Kendrick's back at number 1, no surprise. Shabuzi is number 2. But Sabrina Carpenter is the sole woman in the top 10 with 2 singles. What's interesting, and I've read, and then a bunch of people who are famous on TikTok. But what's interesting, and what people have noted, is that hip-hop...
Isn't Billy number 10?
No. Kendrick, Shabuzi, Post Malone, Tommy Richmond, 2 by Sabrina, Hosier, Benson, Brendan Benson, and Teddy Swim.
Oh, okay.
All right. So mainly white guys dipping hardcore into black music. We could do a whole show about how Post Malone gets to do whatever the hell he wants to do, even though he tried to play, be a rapper, and now he's a crooner, and now he's a country.
I believe in music. You should be able to do whatever you want to do.
All right, but white artists get a freedom that black artists don't get.
Well, white people get a freedom that black people
don't
get.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not taking away from the man's talent. Morgan Wallen has 2 songs in the top 10, so much that was the quickest cancellation of all time.
Well, he was never canceled. They canceled him for You Can't Go on the Grammys, but his songs and his album stayed at the top of the chart.
So again, it just shifts all the time. Teddy Swims is new to me. I think he's a white guy. He looks like a desk, and
He's
Yeah,
talented.
he's talented. It's a very retro song. It's a very unsummery song, to be honest with you. It's a very kind of, late night boudoir song, but which it's hard to take from a man who looks like your desk in junior high where you write all over your desk and there's just nothing. She said, so Hozier has a great voice. I don't get it with him, but he can sing, and the Irish get a pass when it comes to like soulful music because we all know the Irish are good at that. I don't know who Tommy Richmond is. It's supposed to be a hip hop song, $1 Million Baby.
$1 Million Baby. It started out. It's what you actually have probably heard that and don't realize that's.
No, I've heard it. I just don't.
It's gone. It started out as a viral hit on TikTok, and now it grew out of that.
Yeah, it's that annoying white girl and her African husband dancing in the forest song.
Do you remember when we kept seeing that everywhere?
Oh no! Now it's been replaced by the Stepford wife cooking dinner, but it's my fault because I click on it. The Mormon Stepford wife cooking dinner for her husband.
Sorry, what?
Oh, you don't know about the trad wife phrase? You don't know about trad wives? Google it. Look up trad wives. Look up trad wives.
What's a trad wife?
Traditional wife. So it's basically a woman who has tons of babies and tends to her man, and this woman's a Mormon.
Gotcha.
And she's very pretty. She's a biracial Mormon who grew up in Germany and yet who speaks English without an accent. So let's discuss that. But we won't discuss that. But she's very pretty. And she literally, there's tons of parody. Nara, she's tons of parody videos of her, people making like tables from scratch. Because she makes everything from scratch with 3 children under the age of 3. But I digress. All right. Amber Rose, I, as a white person, will not, cannot, should not, never will have a discussion about what constitutes being black. Not going to do it. If you do a Google search of Amber Rose and you break down her racial background, if this were Louisiana in the 1900s, she would be considered an African American. She's like all different types of white, and then her mother is part Cape Verdean. But I'm not going to argue with her. If she wants to be held up as an example of a post-racial America, God bless. The problem with Amber Rose is this is a woman who kind of made her bones advocating for women's sexual power and the slut walks. I mean, her dating aside, I don't like judging women by who they date or choose to have babies with. She spoke at the RNC because she is now saying, oh, people told me that Trump was racist. That's a lie. There's nothing but love in MAGA. And
she said he's the ultimate alpha male, the protector, the provider.
Yeah. So it's just painful to watch somebody not only drink the Kool-Aid, but ask for seconds and thirds. It's painful for any woman to be advocating for Trump. I say that for myself. But they trotted her out, as the Republicans tend to do. They find, I'm not saying you can't be conservative and being black, but to sit there and say that Trump and MAGA is all about love and racial equality is like cognitive dissonance of a level that they haven't even studied yet. So, in a sign that maybe we can come together as a nation, her selection. I know you don't like Joey Reid. I have a problem. I'm not crazy about her either, but she did a whole breakdown of why Amber Rose has no right to get up there and represent herself as a black woman, seeing as Amber Rose has never said that she's black. Again, a conversation I can't have. But then on the other side, MAGA people are pissed because they're saying Amber Rose represents having sex because you want to have sex because it's fun, and slut, and what is she doing up there? So it's very good that we finally have come together. Nobody likes Amber Rose.
I find it really interesting because, first of all, I find the black people that they trot out to be quite interesting. I saw one of those rap dudes who was like, yeah, Trump, one of the 2 that he brought up there to speak or at one point next to him at one of his rallies. And one of them was like, yeah, Trump might maybe be the person to vote for the first time. And I'm just thinking, yeah, these are the kind of people you want. You're here telling us about Trump is your guy and you've never voted. You're complaining, but you've never voted. No one cares. Maybe they thought because Amber Rose has a name that she means something. She doesn't mean anything to the Black community. She was Kanye's girlfriend. Then she's some girl who goes on different reality shows for checks.
And she was Wiz Khalifa's wife.
Right.
And then she was Cher's current boyfriend's wife.
Yeah, we don't care about her. Her opinion means nothing. Let her go up there and speak. She's not going to sway anyone in the Black community.
No.
We don't take her seriously. And then when you have somebody like Van Jones, who is just the absolute, I mean, he's just like an unflushed toilet in a public bathroom.
No, he's horrible. The man has worked horrible.
He's like,
well, Van Jones, we should establish, is a Democrat.
This is a big problem for the Democratic Party. Amber Rose?
No.
What planet are you on? We don't.
He's on the.
She could speak. She could have been up there butt naked with sparklers on her breast, shooting MAGA lights across the arena. We don't care. If that's what she wants to do, great. She does not speak for the Black community. She speaks for herself. And here's a fun fact. And I want to say this a little interrupted people, so hear me out. I understand things are more expensive today, but there's not a place in the world where something is the same price today that it was 4 years ago. And I feel like it's been like that my entire life. And I always find it interesting. People are like, and groceries are more expensive. Yes, they are. But we're not talking to the CEOs of these companies who are making record profits for their shareholders. And I just saw a CEO on television doing an interview saying, well, listen, when the interviewer asked him, he said, why can't you guys, you're making a lot of money, your profits are, why can't you be the hero to say we're cutting this and come in and be the hero of the country, we're cutting this price 25%. And he said, well, we don't have to, because people are getting used to paying the new price. They're fine with it. They don't mind it. That's what they're thinking. So because while everybody is arguing about the president and my food bill, guess what? They're having the same issues in Germany. They're having the same issues in the UK. People cannot afford their rents. Like even in the English countryside, it's not just the big cities. Their groceries have gone up. The price of petrol has gone up. And fun fact, every summer, the price of gas seems to mysteriously spike the time when they know everybody's going to be taking road trips. So it's like, I would like a little more accountability to all of the private equity that is buying up all of the homes and driving up all of the rents. Because I don't care what party you're in. If you live in a blue state and shit's fucked up in your state, that is the problem. If you live in a red state and shit is fucked up in your state, you need to be looking to the people you put in office who are not doing anything to help you with these issues. They campaign on them, then they keep you angry. And they say, this is what's happening, and they're doing this to us. And while you're being angry, you're not paying attention to the fact that nobody's actually doing anything to help you, and they're never going to change it. Private equity is changing this entire world, and corporate greed is changing this entire world. And it does not matter if Trump gets back in an office. Listen, you want to be in a capitalist country? We are a capitalist country, and this is how it works. Some people are going to have it, and some people aren't. And that's just what it is.
All right. We'll have this. I think it matters deeply of Trump, not your issue.
Yes,
it matters deeply.
No, you missed the point of what I said.
No,
because what I'm saying is, yes, it does matter if he's in office, but I'm saying that's not going to turn the price of your groceries back.
No, I know.
It's not going to turn the price of your rent back, because Republicans are deeply capitalists.
No, I know.
So I'm just saying, people need to be looking at the real issue. The real issue is corporate greed. Corporate greed. The prices in your market have gone up, not because someone called your senator or you know what I mean? I'm just saying, I hope people are smart and stop letting the people who are yelling at you yell at you, and pay attention to your the local politics to the top. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with our guest, Daniel Rachel. And we're back.
Hey, Daniel.
Hello.
Hey, I'm assuming you're in England.
I'm in London.
Oh, how is it?
How's London? It's fantastic. It's best
Yeah,
place to live.
congratulations on your new government.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Keir Starmer years begin.
How is that? Courtney was just raising the point that you guys are fucked, we're fucked, everybody's fucked.
Why are
It's
we?
just what color of fuck you want. Yeah.
Why,
Oh no, you're fucked. You're less fucked than we are.
why are we?
No, we were just talking about
Capitalism.
how everything's gotten really expensive. People are not able to afford to live in certain neighborhoods anymore, how the prices of food and petrol and everything has gone up, and just people are over it.
Well, I guess,
On
but
that note.
that's never changed, has it? That's always been the case. It's the have and the have-nots.
And that's what I just said. I'm like, I feel like every year it always changes, but hey, who am I to know? And we found
All right.
Catherine Middleton, which made me very happy to see her at Wimbledon. I don't know why I got excited, but I did.
I don't know why you got excited either.
No.
And anyway, thank you for doing this, number one. I want to give a proper introduction. I do this every show. Courtney laughs when I do this. I hold up the book, even though we're audio, but it makes me feel like I'm on a television show. Oh, it's backwards. All right, Too Much Too Young, the Two-Tone Record Story, Root Boys, Racism, and the Soundtrack of a Generation. Thank you. Courtney and I we were there. I know I saw Madness. I don't remember if I saw the specials, but because I was alive in the 70s and the 80s. So forgive me. I may have been somewhat under the influence at the time. And I saw Madness at a punk club in San Francisco. So it's a really, really fascinating book. It's really exhaustive. It goes through all of the elements of the two-tone era, which, why don't you explain to us how you came about to why you decided to tell this story? Because it's a really important story. And this is something that Courtney and I touch on a lot, the intersection between politics and culture and pop music. And this was an era, two-tone, that definitely summed that up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what made you do this?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a fan of two-tone music. I grew up with it, and it had quite a profound effect on my musical taste, the way I dressed myself, and it gave me an introduction into social and political issues. And I'd previously written a book about rock against racism, and I guess that this is the natural kind of link that as Rock Against Racism was really taking hold of the United Kingdom, so two-tone was established by Jerry Dammers, directly influenced by what Rock Against Racism was trying to do, and then it ran parallel. And of course, the very final event for Rock Against Racism in Britain in summer of 1981 was a headline set by the Specials when Ghost Town was at number one. But there's never been a comprehensive book on two-tone that tells the story of the label and the intention of Jerry Dammers and the achievements and also the failures of the label as well. And I've had a burning passion to do it ever since I've been old enough to read books, I guess, because I've more than read anything that's ever been written about two-tone, or so there you are.
Which is kind of fascinating in itself. It's so funny, Courtney. I'm showing you the book. You see the logo. You know the two-tone logo. Do you think that's where Canal Jeans got their inspiration?
I mean, maybe.
Canal Jeans was a very famous. Yeah, Courtney, I'm sorry.
But I feel like Canal Jeans, didn't it originally come around in the 60s?
I don't know. But we're really having a New York moment there. But when I saw that, I went, Canal Jeans. It's really interesting you talk about Rock Against Racism. I was in a very short-lived chapter of it in San Francisco, which that and 50 cents will get me on the subway. But we did put on shows. But the one thing that really made the American versions of Rock Against Racism, and I'm going to assume the British versions, is that they weren't as integrated in the United States as they were in London, and they were political, but it seems like you guys have always found a way to mix the political and the musical way better than we ever had in the United States. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
I mean, that's a really fascinating point. I'd have to think about American artists and come back to that one. But in terms of England, I mean, the divisions between white and black and non-white in the 1970s was quite extreme. Not perhaps as extreme as it had been in the US and continued to be in that period, but it was a stark problem that was being ignited by government ministers, conservative ministers in the latter part of the 60s and early 70s, and as a result led to increased street battles between neo-Nazis and right-wing supporting factions on our city streets, and it was ultimately fueled by our leader of the opposition in 1978, Margaret Thatcher, who spoke out on mainstream television to say that the country was being swamped by people of an alien culture.
And that sounds familiar. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah. Well, I think it was largely regarded as an attempt by the Conservative Party in opposition to try and bring to the party the National Front support. And the National Front at that point were incrementally
it's a hard word to say,
gaining in support electorally. And threatening to put a candidate in every single constituency at the next general election, which would be 1979. So culturally, as a kind of response to what was happening politically and also what was happening with our rock stars, people like Eric Clapton, David Bowie, Rod Stewart, who are making unwise comments, fascistic comments, and particularly Eric Clapton, who made blatant racist comments at a concert in Birmingham in 1976. Rock Against Racism was formed, and their idea of a gig was to put a reggae band, i.e. black musicians, with punk bands, white musicians, and they put them on an event together. And at the end of the night, they would have what was called a jam. And the musicians from both of those bands would come together and do something. So the famous jam at a carnival would be members of Steel Pulse, one of Britain's greatest ever rock bands, joining forces with The Clash or the Tom Robinson Band. Now, Jerry Dammer saw that and thought, rather than being separate entities, why can't that be within one band, a la Sly and Family Stone, for example? And so the Specials was formed as a multicultural idea, and then other bands in their wake were doing the same. The Beat, the Selector, the Body Snatchers, these bands that joined and released records on Two Tone. So Two Tone immediately from the outset had a political and a social agenda to address politics, social politics on the street, and not just black-white issues, but class issues and also gender issues, and for the plight of women, which, although were a majority in society, were a minority in culture.
There were a lot of women-led groups in Two Tone, for sure. It's funny. I mean, Courtney and I both grew up in New York. We're both. I'm a little bit older than Courtney, so he has. But we're both musically the same age, basically.
I'm 36.
Metric. And I'm 40 metric. But we heard, I saw Bob Marley when I was in high school, but reggae was not as ingrained. I know. I don't remember it. That's another thing. I do remember the Temptations. No, I do remember it. But the Temptations opened up for him.
Did they?
I think so.
Soul and reggae. Wow.
Albert got to see him. Albert got to see him when he did that show at the Garden. I want to say the Commodores.
Oh.
And I think the Commodores.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
part
sense.
Of that tour.
Yeah, I saw him at the Beacon.
I can't believe you've seen Bob Marley. That's wild.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
was.
wish. I know. I
I
had
would
to lie
love
to
to
my
see that.
mom and tell her I was going someplace else so I could go into the city.
I mean, all
And
the
the
two
harder they
tone
come,
music. Sorry,
I'm sorry. Go. Yeah.
no, I interrupted.
No,
But I
no, I was
think,
going to say the reggae thing here never quite caught on the way it did. I mean, we had
oh
the
no, I
harder
mean
they
you had
come.
John Lennon on the Mike Douglas show, and Mike Douglas says to Lennon, "What's reggae?" And John Lennon has to explain in 1976, and then quite or 74, I can't remember the year, but it's extraordinary, mid 70s. And then you had the play, didn't you, in on Broadway in 1980. What's it called? I think it was called. Was it called Reggae? And it closed after just several weeks, and just it was not something that was really understood. And I think that when Madness and then the Specials and then the Selector came to the US in late 79, 1980. It was incredibly received, but it was up against it, wasn't it? I mean, Debbie Harry famously introduced the Specials in Long Island, but when the Selector went out to find out to South Fork to see if they could find out who shot JR. They just received a barrage of racist abuse by people within the area. Linval Golding of the Specials went into a shop and got a load of racist abuse, and he was only probably saved from a lynching because he had an English accent. When Steel Pulse came out to the States, there was a lynching only just days before they played in Birmingham, Alabama. So
Whoa.
the acceptance of black and white musicians by two-tone acts coming out to the States was always going to be very, very difficult. And ultimately, Madness, the only white band, partially had they had a top 5 hit with Our House, and then no hits thereafter, really, so to speak of. Whereas here, virtually 20 straight top 20 hits, the greatest singles band of the 1980s in the UK.
Really? Wow. Well, also, I mean, I guess that was going to kind of lead into what Courtney and I have been wanting. I mean, America's racist. I don't know if you got that memo, but as a lot of countries are. But there is this sense of like what we call the Christopher Columbus. Are you familiar with that? The Christopher Columbus syndrome. It's basically when white people invent something, discover something that's already been there, like Christopher Columbus.
I've not heard it called that, but
yeah.
I just learned Christopher Columbus at school. Never mind the fakery of that.
Yeah, he has a whole. So basically,
that's
Christopher Columbus.
Point, though, Amy, because in Britain, in British schools, we were taught a bastardized version of the empire. I certainly wasn't taught about racism in British schools, but I learned about that in a two-tone record. I wasn't taught about sexual violence and rape, but I was taught about that in a two-tone record. I wasn't taught about apartheid in South Africa and who Nelson Mandela was, but I was taught about that in a two-tone record.
Courtney, do you remember if we ever in American schools? Do you remember was South Africa ever discussed, or were we out of school? Were we out of school at that point?
No, I mean, I went to Catholic school. We never discussed racism. Was never discussed. Slavery was not even. I feel like that was talked about in passing. Like, yeah this thing kind of happened. You know what I mean? It was like nothing about anything about race. It's still not taught in schools.
No, and none
of that history is taught in schools.
This is why culture, and particularly music, was so important in my youth, and I think for why it became such a tribal movement and took over the UK for about 2 years, which for a pop cultural movement in that period was phenomenal. I mean, commercially it eclipsed punk in this country, and that you could dance to incredible melodies and backbeats, that you could wear these fine threads that the two-tone artists were wearing before you really even got to the substance of the lyrics was quite an incredible thing, and it really did affect thousands of people's lives, and that is typified by that record Nelson Mandela, which Jerry Dammers and Rhoda Dakar both told me that one of their proudest moments is when they turned on the BBC News and there was a stadium in South Africa full of black kids, and they were singing the chorus "Free Nelson Mandela." That's an amazing thing.
Yeah, the political, because I was sort of a little punk rock kid, I guess, in San Francisco, and saw the Pistols and saw the Clash when they came over, and there always was that undertone. But because England's by American standards is tiny. I mean, it's a small country, so and
Yeah.
there's a different concept of without getting too into. Courtney touched on this before, without getting too into the economic of it. There is a sense you're seeing the struggle of the working class much more up close and personal, I think, in cities like Covington and London, of course, than you would in the United States. You cannot see it in the United States if you don't want to see it. You know what I'm saying? So I
Well,
think the music would reflect that.
this country is class driven, and it always has been, and it remains so. And to understand anything about the UK, you need to understand class, and particularly two tone. But it's a misnomer to kind of cage two tone as a working class movement. I mean, for a start, within the bands there was a cross of class. Within the Body Snatchers, there was upper class, middle class, working class. Within the Specials, middle class, working class. Jerry Dammers was middle class, as was Horace the bass player. There was that's all important, really. There were university educated kids within Two Tone, and that is a great thing, that this mix of class was enabling something to happen. But it's also one of the inherent problems that will define the downfall of Two Tone ultimately.
How so? Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, for example, I mean, when the Specials started to tour, first time in the States in this March 1918, and again in latter part of 1981, there was a lot of talk about within the band of, for example, shall we go in a limousine? Shall we go in a nice hotel? Now, if you've come from working class stock, the idea of even getting in a limousine is wow. That never happens to people like me. I'm having that. To go in a nice hotel where there's a bath inside the room, not outside your house, for example, I'm having that. Whereas a more middle class attitude might well be, listen, we don't need to take these things. Let's save our money. And so you get class differentials in what you want from life, what you don't want from life, and I think that becomes problematic within the Specials, if not other bands. And that's just a very minute problem. Whereas Jerry Dammers says within the book, we'd seen what had happened with Brett Eklund and Rod Stewart, that when Rod kind of went for the glamour, went for the jewellery, and he felt betrayed a certain class of type of fan, and he wanted to hold on to those kind of core values, that when you become famous, you don't betray your fans by going into these kind of unattainable echelons of pop stardom. He wanted the Specials to remain rooted, which is why they always invited the fans onto the stage, break down the fourth wall, the theatrical fourth wall. And they, and there's great photographs of Two Tone gigs where you literally can't see where the stage ends and the audience begins. But money came into Two Tone, drugs came into Two Tone, class differences came in and stretched and caused all these bands internally to erupt. In the UK, you add to that the violence and the neo-Nazi penetration and the right-wing penetration of gigs, and the whole thing was combustible. But that stoked fire is what, and I think, gives the music its edge and brilliance. And without it, you wouldn't have got the great records that we do get.
Courtney, did you ever rock a two tone look? Because I can totally see you in one of those hats, and you have your kind of a two tone. But Courtney, you ever rock that look?
No, remember, it's like you have to remember, like, so I was young and gay, so I had my London looks. I was very like rolled up jeans. I had this boy London crop denim jacket that you could not tell me shit. And then I thought I was Madonna. You know what I mean? So it was like I had black bracelets going all the way up to here. You could not tell me I wasn't fucking Madonna.
Yeah, I'm also Rankin Roger made melody. Did you know that?
It was
Did you know Rankin Roger had a little dalliance with Madonna?
I did know that Rankin Roger had a little dalliance.
That does not why does that not surprise
Isn't
me?
that great? They met in a club
He was
in New
very
York.
cute.
Who, Madonna or Roger? Or they both were, weren't they?
Yeah, you know what I mean?
They met early on in a club in the States, and when Madonna came over to do her first club tour of the UK, she came to London and met up with Roger again, and there's a wonderful photograph of the two of them together. I think Roger's only 16 or 17.
That tracks.
That sounds about right.
That tracks. That totally tracks. Yeah.
Gay is a thing that's missing in the two-tone story, largely. I mean, later, Dave Wakelin of The Beat came out as bisexual, but not during two-tone. And with so many men involved,
I didn't know.
women,
Breaking news.
I'm not aware that anybody came out in that time. Maybe that was too much for society, they felt, to handle, you know.
Well, people didn't really, if you think about that period of time, it was very few people who stood up front and said, I'm gay, I'm bisexual. That was the one thing that was still kind of taboo.
Can you think of any, Courtney, in this period, 79, 80, 81, came out in pop music?
No.
Tom Robinson.
Yeah, exactly, Tom Robinson.
No.
Glad to be gay, yeah.
And that's also, though, 2 years later, you have the onset of AIDS, so nobody was going to come out and say, because it was, you know, you weren't going to say that because people were terrified of gay people.
Yeah.
You know, so they weren't. Yeah, Tom Robinson is the only person I can think of at that time who was obvious from not obvious in a bad way, but it was from the beginning. Because did Boy George even come out?
No, not then. And even Elton John denied it.
No, he used to always just say, I'm George. I think the one artist who I remember always seeming to live an authentic life in that period, the late 70s to the early 80s, was Sylvester.
Yeah.
Sylvester was very like, this is what it is. You know what I mean? And he even outed his husband. Remember, he had married his husband. He was on the Joan Rivers when Joan Rivers had a talk show, and he talked about we're married, and the husband's parents had no idea.
Wow. Well, that's not.
I have to ask you about. I had totally forgotten that Elvis Costello produced. It's the first Specials record or the first Madness record. I'm totally blanking now.
He played in New York last night.
Did he? Did you go?
No, it was him and Daryl Hall at Radio City.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Costello was making absolutely fantastic records in this period, and then he started going to see the Specials up and down the country and just thought they were magnificent, but he feared that if they got in with the wrong producer, that their sound and the spirit of the Specials would be lost. So he went in as the non-producer, but he made a brilliant record. I mean, if you hear live tapes of the Specials, the album, live tapes of the Specials in '79, it's not what the album is. He did something very different, but I think it was a very astute move, and he made some brilliant choices. Fun choices, and produced a fabulous record. And then years later, Jerry Dammers brought him back in to record, to produce Nelson Mandela. And then a Costello single, I Can't Stand Up for Falling Down, was printed on two-tone, but it was never officially released. And he ended up giving out free copies outside the Palladium in New York, I think, in early '81.
But then, of course, the irony may be the wrong. We've had a heat wave here for a week, and Courtney and I are basically we're basically like human humidity. You were talking to yeah. We have our fans like we don't want to interrupt the noise, but
what I keep doing is turning it off when I go off mute, and then I keep putting you guys on mute because I'm sitting here dying. Like, what is happening?
Keep the sun there, because all we've had is rain. I'm coming to the US at the beginning of September to New York.
It'll be done by then. It'll be done. Hopefully,
I
God, inshallah, we will not have any more humidity. It's very bad in New York, and we'll have to meet up when you come here. But I was going to say the irony is that, Costello is working in this very kind of forward-thinking, cultural, expansive way, and then a year later he gets nailed for the comments about Ray Charles. And we all boycotted him then, with Oliver's Army and the comments he made about Ray Charles. So,
Yeah. I've never quite understood where he was coming at with that, really, the baiting of a journey.
Okay, I believe the word is alcohol. I believe that is the word we're looking for, is very drinking.
Yeah,
but we all boycotted him.
Right.
We all said
Paul Simon when he did Graceland.
It didn't take much for me to boycott Paul Simon.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, no, but we did. No, I mean, yeah, it was one of those. You were South Africa, the boycott of South Africa. I mean, it finally started making an impact. I mean, Citibank. Remember, were you ever at Citibank, Courtney? Were you a Citibank person?
I was always Chase. When it was Chemical Bank, then it turned.
When it was Chemical Bank, but no, there was a noticeable. I mean, when Mandela came to New York, it was a major thing.
I remember it being a big deal.
Yeah, he came down our street in the Mandela mobile. They came in, and there were throngs of people. He ended up going to Yankee Stadium, right? Is that where he spoke?
I believe that's where he spoke.
Yeah, no, it was major. But what's for me?
I have a question. Can we talk about the beat and their importance in this whole scene?
Oh,
I was a huge beat fan, which we call them the English beat here, which I was like, why are they English beat? They're just
because there was a band in the United States called The Beat, a new wave band called The Beat. So they had dibs on the name. That's why they were called the English beat here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a great story, The Beat, because Rankin Roger was the first punk in Birmingham, where I was originally from. And the white kids in The Beat were all into reggae, so you got the kind of this reverse influence. And they did they read about the specials in the British music paper, and then discussed the guitar player through the paper on the floor, thinking we've been beaten to it, we can't do the music that we're doing. But Jerry Dammers crossed over to Birmingham, met Roger, and then got to see The Beat, and they got offered a deal. They did a single on two-tone, and then immediately, as you were encouraged to do on two-tone, use us as a platform, a stepping stone, and then go and do your own thing. So they did, and set up their own label in the image of two-tone, Go Feet, and went on to have a fantastic 3-album career. And they really expanded their the sound, and they played with some really influential groups. They toured with Talking Heads, and they REM opened for them, and they really had a really great sound, And I love The Beat. I helped write Roger's memoir which was published just a month after he died, and that was a real privilege to do.
Court,
Mirror in the Bathroom is my fucking shit. I love that song so much. It's so good.
Mirror in the Bathroom is such a great song on so many different levels.
Yeah.
That was a big hit here, right, Court?
It was a hit.
Yeah, and it was like an MTV hit, too. We're the guy...
College radio. They were a huge college radio band in the U.S.
And then by the third album, they were playing Red Rocks. It just felt like it was about to really explode, and instead it imploded for the band, and general public came instead, and then the Fine Young Cannibals. But I think what's really interesting about The Beat's connection to two-tone...
You just answered the question. I was going to ask Courtney, wasn't there a Fine Young Cannibals, The Beat connection? And it went, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Andy and Dave, the rhythm section in The Beat became Fine Young Cannibals. And then Roland had, in his original band, Acrylics, had supported The Beat. But you know what's interesting? Because, Dave Wakeling was dismayed at the violence initially at Beat concerts by neo-Nazis and right fascists. And he said he had this great idea. Why don't we get a beat girl to dance with the two-tone man? And so they invented the beat girl, and the colours of the beat became pink instead of black and white. And they tried to dilute the male aggression within their concerts, and it worked. But what's really interesting is the beat girl is based on a Jamaican artist called Bridget Bond. And Bridget Bond turned out to be transsexual, or was a woman but had been born a man. I'm sorry if my parlance isn't right. And I don't think many people know that. And I always think it's hilarious that it only really became a story or became known in the last few years. And I think it's a brilliant thing that all these hardened skinhead types or right wing people had tattoos of the Beat Girl on their forearm, only to find out that girl was originally born a man. It's brilliant.
I'm sorry. That is, I mean, yeah, that again tracks. That makes sense, of course. Have you kept up with any? There's been like a ska. I don't know, like No Doubt, and what was that band that Smash? What was that group that was like ska-y? Was that Smash Mouth? Were they ska-ish? But there was like a ska thing going ish. There was like a ska thing going on in the United States for like a hot minute. And it's sort of back, but it seemed to be lacking like sort of the heft of the English stuff. Did you guys pay attention to that stuff at all? Or did you just see it as us kind of biting your style?
Well, No Doubt had hits here in the UK, but I mean, in Too Much Too Young, I don't talk about the so-called third wave of ska. I end the story when the two-tone label ends in the mid-'80s, and I don't really know anything about what happened on the West Coast in the early 90s, mid-'90s. I know that because it was such a scene, it prompted members of two-tone bands to come together in different formations, and you get the International Beat and bands like that, and they play to enormous audiences, but it's not something I know too well about. Perhaps I'll learn more. As I say, I come over in late August to the States. But I've only ever been to New York, and I'm doing a 12-date tour of the States, starting in Los Angeles with Lin-Val Golding and Sarah Jane from the Body Snatchers, doing a tour there, and then I work my way across until I get to New York, talking about Too Much Too Young. So perhaps I'll find out how much influence two-tone really has had in the US, because I can't really get a sense of it, how big it was or wasn't really, apart from pockets on the East and West Coasts.
Well, Fun Boy 3 was pretty big here too.
Really?
So, I mean, I know yeah, right, Court? I mean, wasn't Fun Boy 3 pretty big here?
They had a moment, but I also feel like they were that was back when we really had huge college radio. They were like that college radio band, and there was that whole circuit you could do, and all of those small clubs and the alternative clubs, and they were kind of hot in that circuit.
Well, Terry Hall co-wrote Our Lips Are Sealed with Jane Whelan. Of course, the Go-Go had a big hit with that, and after those bands had played together, Go-Go's played with Madness and Specials before they went on to have that #1 album, and it's a fantastic song. I mean, it's quite punky, the Go-Go's version, but the Fun Boy 3 one is brilliant. But then, of course, when the Fun Boy 3 came to the States, they ran into problem because they burned the Stars and Stripes on stage, didn't they? And then it was filmed.
You're not allowed to do that.
No,
I will say when Terry Hall passed, his obit was front page in the New York Times. No, his obit was amazing. There was a lot. I think we talked about that, Court, right? I mean, we were obviously fans, but I think we were both sort of taken aback, like, wow, I didn't realize he had that much of an in. His obit was like he got a in memoriam at the Grammys. He got an in memoriam at the. I mean, it was a pretty big deal when he died. Amazing. Yeah.
I mean,
it's interesting how some of those people really influenced such a wide berth of people that you don't even think were paying attention. But that it felt music at that time felt richer, and it was really it almost felt like an anarchy toward all of the regular shit that was going on. And I know for me, I was always looking for all of that. Like, I would go to my import record shops and it was always what was happening in the UK and going through those records and buying these records because it just felt like they were saying something. And I think also when you're young, there's that youth movement when you're feeling like you against the world. And though a lot of that music really spoke to universal issues, you know what I mean? And so I think when we see certain people in their past. And Amy and I, we tend to be surprised because some things don't blow up as big here as they do in other places. And you think people don't know who certain folks are. And then you sit and you're like, oh, okay, I guess that impact is universal. It was worldwide. People did recognize the greatness.
Yeah, I'm amazed to hear that about, particularly about Terry Hall. I mean, he was massive. His obituaries were huge in this country across all the media, television, radio, the press, national press. I mean, we as for our generations, we'd grown up with Terry Hall, and that started with the specials, and then the Funboy 3, obviously Colourfield, and all the iterations he went through. And then, when they got back together as the Funboy specials, then, he was a major pop star for us, and a really incredible figure. Somebody that spoke, that was sexually assaulted as a schoolboy on a school trip to France, which he spoke about on the David Byrne produced second Funboy 3 album, and thereafter, and maybe beforehand, had problems with his own health, his mental health, and I think he spoke about that with a clarity and a kind of realism that perhaps other pop stars hadn't talked about. And that's quite a touching part of his life, really. Also a sad part that he was forever struggling with who he was and what his place was within the world, I guess. So the outpouring for his immediate family must have been incredible.
And Ghost Town is, now, to be fair, Courtney and I live in a somewhat rarefied world in that we're surrounded by, we are not like the average person, and we live in New York, so we have a different view of the universe. But, and like I did say, he did. No, it's like we don't live in the United States. We live in New York, and where we've been in the, we're music people, so we always laugh like everybody we know owns that record. How come that person isn't famous? But no, it was a big deal, and also Ghost Town.
Yeah,
it was important. It made an impact here as well.
Great. No, Ghost Town is a really, really important record in the Two Tone Story. It was a number one record in the UK, and it happens just as Britain was preparing for the major event of the century, which was the marriage of Prince Charles to Princess Diana. The country was swept up by that, but then, in these pockets of, I say pockets, in over 35 cities in Britain, riots erupted in the spring of 1981 that happened a little bit in 1980, as they did in Miami. Dissatisfaction with how the establishment was treating underclasses, the dispossessed, the disenfranchised. And as the specials toured their second album, More Special, so Jerry Dammers saw this discrepancy between those who were benefiting from the Thatcher experiment and those that were being left behind. And that worked itself into the lyrics of Ghost Town, into the musicality of Ghost Town. But Ghost Town works on three levels. It talks about those social and political problems, but it also talks about the problems the specials were facing from their audience, the fighting in the audience. But it also talks, as all Jerry Dammers songs do, about the personal, and that is the problems that were happening within the band. Bands won't play no more, too much fighting on the dance floor, because there was fighting in the specials, there was fighting at the gigs, there was fighting on the streets of Britain. It's a kind of a tripartite song, and it's very clever. And it's one of the. I think for British culture, it's one of the greatest songs ever recorded.
No, it's a.
I do have one question before we wrap up. For all of the subjects that this music was talking about, why was it so attractive to the right wing and the Nazi youth? What was it about it that brought those people to all of these bands in that time period in the UK?
It's the most obvious and simple question, and I think the hardest question for two-tone artists to answer. And I think they've struggled with answering that question for all of their lives. Why were these factions who could come to their gigs and dance to these fantastic rhythms emanating from the Caribbean and enjoy themselves and be swept up by the momentum of this great music, and yet in between the songs want to disrupt it and want to spit and throw stuff at the black members of the bands, to abuse them, to cause as much problems as they possibly could. Why was that? There was certainly a clampdown on football, which is a dominant culture in Britain, and a large contingent of football fans and went into dance halls, and the recruitment of youth who were looking to define themselves away from their parents. They could find these people in concerts, and they were trying to influence them away from the beautifulness of two-tone and other concerts as well. It wasn't just two-tone, into a political right-wing neo-Nazi mindset. This was a great breeding ground for it. And but also, these bands, although they started playing to just several hundred, were soon playing to several thousand. And it wasn't several thousand people being disruptive, despite the exaggerated reports and of artists at the time. It was minority groups, maybe 10 here, 10 there, 10 there, but there was extreme violence, there were stabbings, and it was, it's what attracts copy, but it shouldn't be remembered as that's what the abiding influence of two-tone was, or even a single two-tone concert. The majority got what it was trying to do, for sure.
And the legacy?
The legacy's hard. I think the legacy is people like me. Perhaps it's people like you that were, just swept away by fantastic music, great lyricism, something you could dance to. People that still want to put on that vinyl today or click on it on Spotify. They're magnificent records, first and foremost. That is the legacy. But we still, the legacy, we're celebrating Terry Hall. He was the lead singer of the Specials. We go in our thousands to go and see iterations of the Beat and the Body Snatchers, and we still celebrate Madness. I mean, Madness performed on the roof of Buckingham Palace. They were part of the opening ceremony of the 2012 Olympics. These bands have a presence. They influence these 90s musicians in the States. They influence musicians today. Maybe we as a young generation took on the values that we would not be sexist, misogynistic. We would understand what sexual violence was. We would learn what rape was. We'd learn who Nelson Mandela was. We'd learn that black and white uniting is a natural state of being, not something to be fought against. The legacy is within the lyricism, the branding, the look of two-tone.
You should write a book about this. Damn, Skippy.
That goddamn Daniel Rachel beat me to it.
God damn him. That Daniel Rachel. So I want to ask you a question when we go offline that I just don't want to ask online, not because it's mean, but I'm just curious about something and it'll throw a whole conversation up. So hold tight when we cut, but Courtney is going to do what he does best. Well, thank you first off, Daniel, for doing this.
Talk about the book.
I'm going to hold this up one more time. Look, I'm holding it up. Too Much Too Young. Great title, by the way. I mean, great song, but that's a good title. Too Much Too Young, the two-tone record story, Rude Boys, racism, and the soundtrack of a generation. It's gotten rave reviews. And guess what, dopey Americans? Daniel's going to be coming to a town near you if you live in 12 of these towns. And he's going to be giving talks. You're going to be doing interviews with journalists or doing readings.
A real mix of people, sometimes musicians, sometimes professors, all kinds of different people I'm in conversation with.
Well, give us. I'll hit up Ken as well. But get a list of where you're going to be speaking, and we'll post it when it comes. We'll come
in New York,
tour time. What?
In New York, it's Rough Trade. The night.
Oh, you're going to be a Rough Trade. That's great.
Yeah, who are you talking with?
Brooklyn.
Where are you talking? Who are you talking to with Rough Trade?
Oh God, what's his name? The musician.
Oh, him.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, him.
Well, that's
That
all right.
guy.
We'll have all the information, and we'll
have all the information.
and we'll post it on all of our socials. And you know what it is, kids. Thank you for another episode. It's episode 195 of I'ma Let You Finish. We're sweating like whores in church, and we just want to say to you all that we will see you next week. You know the deal. Tell a friend, share, follow us on the Pantheon Podcast Network, which also has some really good stuff coming up. There's really, really good stuff coming up. Anyway, you know the deal. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.